Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Ask Schellie segment. I don't even know if it's 12 o'clock yet. Where is my other phone? Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Ask Schellie segment. My name is Schellie Fanfan, and I am the owner of Ask Schellie Consulting. And I am so happy to be with you on this morning or this afternoon. I'm feeling really good, guys, and I'm going to tell you in just a second. Just waiting for some more people to get on. I'm going to fiddle with this a little bit. You guys know my story. All right, sorry, didn't mean to put my hand in the camera. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Please let me know if you could see me okay. I'm using different equipment today. So I'm trying to upgrade. I'm using different equipment, so I just want to make sure that you guys see me okay. Hello, Endless Events. Thank you for joining. Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, thank you so much for the heads up. I just want to make sure that you guys can see me okay. Hello, Facebook. Hello, Instagram. It is Tuesday. It's 12 o'clock, and that means it's time for this week's Ask Schellie segment. Once again, I am Schellie Fanfan, and I am the founder and CEO of Ask Schellie Consulting, LLC. And basically what we do is we teach corporations, large and small businesses, ministries, families, and individuals. We teach them behavioral process, emotional processes, thought processes to enhance their emotional intelligence to assure that they get to their next level. So just to give you a snapshot of what we do, this past week, I had a blast because I absolutely love human resources. And so we are contracting with a not so small business anymore here in the Orlando area. And we have taken over their staff recruitment. So we are doing all of the selections, the interviewing, the second final interviewing. We're doing all of the personality testing to make sure that the characteristics that we're seeing match the needs of the business. And so this is the same business that I did a boot camp with just a few weeks ago, where we did workshops on conflict resolution, on personality management, on motivation, how to draw your team together. We had some leadership development as well, teaching the basic psychological principles that are surrounding motivation. And so that is what we do. And I have the privilege also of sharing questions that I am asked on Tuesdays at 12 on this platform. And so like I always say, when people hear what it is I do, they get very interested. First of all, they get a little afraid or a little uncomfortable thinking that I am assessing them or psychoanalyzing them. And once they get over that comfort and realize that when the button is off, it's off, then I usually get a bunch of questions. And that is also surrounding questions that you guys send via Facebook Messenger, going onto my website, www.askschellie.com, to ask your most difficult questions. And what I do is I take one or two questions. This week we're going to address two, and I answer them and I just provide a response. I provide a perspective. I do not claim to know all the answers, especially since when these questions are asked, I don't have any background information. I haven't sat with the person to get all of the details. I haven't analyzed. I haven't conducted assessments. And so it's very vague and it's very broad. But my hope is that the information and the response that I provide can be something that you can add to your toolbox to share with your loved ones, your family members, apply it to your own life. Whatever it is, my goal is to die empty. And so this is the forum that I have chosen, and I will be doing this for the next several months. Again, this is your Ask Schellie segment, and today's question, we actually have two today. And I want you guys to chime in, because you know what? We are all experts in our own wellness. We just have to engage the answers that are on the inside of us. And when you have a good coach and a good therapist, she can assist you in engaging the answers that are already on the inside of you. okay? And so I have 2 questions today, and I'm going to start with question number 1. If you have a perspective, please chime in. Just put a comment in there. I would love to hear what you have to say. Again, I do not claim to have all the answers. I have about 99.99% of them though. Okay, well, maybe not. But I definitely have experience, and I have anointing, and the education on top of that to provide what I believe is the best response, given the very little information that I have. So here we go. Dear Ask Schellie, I need some help in my marriage. My wife and I argue so much, I avoid contact with her at all costs. It's very toxic. Our children have gotten used to the yelling and general discord between us. We both love the Lord, therefore divorce is not an option. Please help. All right, let me repeat that again. So both of these questions did not necessarily come through my website. This was actually a voicemail, I believe, so it's in my handwriting, which is why I'm struggling. And then the second one was someone that messaged me on my Facebook fan page, which is Schellie Fanfan Sissoko. All right, if you are on, I would appreciate you sharing. I'm gonna repeat the question and we're gonna jump right into it. Dear Ask Schellie, I need some help in my marriage. My wife and I argue so much, I avoid contact with her at all costs. It's very toxic. Our children have gotten used to the yelling and general discord between us. We both love the Lord, therefore divorce is not an option. Please help. Now I wanna say this before I get started. I was very pleased by a response that I got from a listener. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and she sent me a message and said, I don't believe in God, but I listen to you and I follow you, and I find the content to be extremely amazing and helpful. That was so touching. And I think it's important to understand that I am a psychotherapist, I am an ordained minister, so that is the perspective that I'm coming from. It may work for some and it may not work for others. And guess what? It's okay. Take what you need. Get what you need. It's okay for you to have a different perspective or to have a different belief system, but I stand firm in mine. And so when I provide my response, it is a combination of psychological and spiritual principles that I find to be true and effective. So when I start speaking about my faith system and the things that I believe are true, the things that I believe and know to be true, then it's okay for you to not necessarily agree. That is okay. So listener who reached out to me, thank you so much for getting what it is you need. I honor you and value you and your belief systems. We can agree to disagree all day, and guess what? It's okay. Amen? All right. So the reason why I say that is because we have to make sure that before we start to help this couple with their arguments, okay? So this is about a married couple that has a lot of arguments. They're finding it very toxic. We have to assess the stool. We have to remember that we are coming from the perspective of a stool. Very much like the stool that's holding up my phones today, okay? A tripod. Now, if I remove one of the legs, what will happen? If I remove one of the legs, the tripod will not stand. Yes? The tripod will not stand if I remove one of the legs. So when it comes to marriages, one of the first things that I assess as a clinician is that tripod. We have husband, wife, and God as part of that tripod. And so it's very important for me to kind of assess, are we dealing with a balanced tripod or not? They are identifying themselves as believers, so we are going to assume that the tripod is on point. Again, when it comes to marriages and even relationships, depending on the stage that you are in, God should be the center, because without all legs intact in that tripod, it will not stand. The second thing that I always assess are the necessities, those things that really keep relationships, serious relationships, committed relationships, and marriages strong. And they are this: do you two serve together? Do you two pray together? Do you two read the word together? That is very important. I believe that that is the foundation. So we need to address the tripod, right? Where exactly is God in this situation, in this equation? And how can we add that leg to your broken tripod if it's not there? Then we need to look at those necessities, that bottom line. Do you two serve together? Do you pray together? Do you study and read the word together? That is very important because those are foundational principles. Now let's move into conflict resolution. Guys, conflict resolution is a skill. Conflict resolution is a skill. And it is a skill that most of us have not been taught. As a matter of fact, it is a skill that most of us have adopted a whole bunch of learned behavior that is completely unhealthy, and most of the time it is completely toxic. But conflict resolution is a skill. And so when I'm working with couples, I have different conflict resolution paths or types that I take depending on the nature of the problem. So today we're going to talk about unmet expectations. It's usually one of the first paths that I take with couples, especially married couples who have not had therapy before. I go on this first track, which is assessing expectations. So here we go. In this model of conflict resolution, the basic principle is that problems are formed and manifested out of unmet expectations. So the idea is that if we can assess those unmet expectations and get some caring going on, we will see if we are able to address the conflict. Let me define caring, okay? Caring. I think a lot of the times we interchange caring and loving as the same word, and they're not. Caring is a process by which someone has prioritized meeting the expectations of the other person without prioritizing their own. The idea is this: if we both love one another and we both have a desire to resolve the conflict, then as I am prioritizing your expectations and you are prioritizing mine, my expectations are being met without me having to fight for it because we are engaging in a mutual process of meeting each other's expectations. So I don't have to step out of the marriage to get my expectations met because you have committed to meeting them. And I have committed to meeting yours. And so caring is a process by which two people who love one another, right? It could be a caregiver to a child. It could be a teacher to a child. It could be a boss to an employee. The process of caring, meeting the needs and expectations of the one that you love, prioritizing that, and really having faith that in turn you will get what you need and you will get your expectations met as well. So we have to go back to the drawing board to take a look at these expectations and try to get some caring going on, okay? So this is what we do. Give me some names. What is the wife's name and the husband's name? I want you guys to give me the names because we are all helping this couple. Give me a, hi Lise, thank you for joining. Hi Marnisha, Michelle, Jimmy, Sabrina, Eddie, hello. Endless events, cake, something. It's so hard to read names on Instagram. So give me two names, any two names, go ahead, just comment. Give me two names, and that's going to be the couple. Give me the name of the husband, give me the name of the wife, and we're going to kick this thing off. We are helping them resolve conflict, and we are using the modality of assessing expectations and getting care going on between the two of them. All right, I haven't got any names, so I am going to call them What was Peggy's husband on Married with Tiffany? Okay, Tiffany and David. Thank you, Endless Events, Tiffany and David. So Tiffany and David are in our office, guys, and this is what we're going to do. Tiffany and David, I want you to sit down. Take notes, guys. I'm talking to you guys now. Take notes, because this is what you're going to go back and do with your loved one, right, to resolve conflict. Now, there are a lot of different conflict models. We're going to just address this one for today. So we sit Tiffany and David down. Lise, James and Shauna, we're going to have to, James and Shauna will come next because I have a second question. So we'll use James and Shauna for our second question. Okay. Tiffany and David, sit down. Tiffany, I want you to write all of the expectations that you have of David. And David, I want you to write all the expectations that you have of Tiffany. Write them down. And therapists, be okay with silence. Sitting back, letting them write all these expectations down. Then we're gonna say, I want you now to circle every expectation on that list that has not been met. And so they now go into circling all those expectations that they had of the other person that have not been met. And then we say, I want you now to prioritize the top 3 unmet expectations that you think has brought you here today. And I want you to prioritize it 1, 2, 3. Those unmet expectations that have brought you here today. And so they circle it. They number 1, 2, and 3. Will we get to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10? We'll get there. But we're going to start, for the purpose of this live, the first 3. And so now we have individuals, we have, I forgot their names, Tiffany and David. I should write this down. James and Shauna, in case I forget, Lise, remind me, James and Shauna. So we have Tiffany and David in our office. They have wrote down all the expectations that they have of the other. They have circled those unmet expectations. And then they have chosen the top 3 unmet expectations that they think truly fuel the conflict. Okay? All right. So when we do this, we are now going to ask David, what do you think Tiffany has numbered 1, 2, and 3 on her list? And Tiffany, what do you think David has written as 1, 2, and 3 on his list? And we talk about it. It is amazing how most of the time the couples get it wrong. So that's a sign to me that there is no communication going on, because when you are so heated and you are engaging in arguing, right, your emotions are up and your thinking is low. So when your thinking is low, it's very difficult to effectively communicate with the person that you love, which is why it's important to take that 20-minute timeout and revisit the topic so there can be some effective communication going on. Communication is a whole nother live. You want to hear more about communication? Reach me at www.askschellie.com. But most of the time, the couples get it wrong. And so we talk about that a little bit, you know, let's talk about why you were not clear about how do you feel about her 1, 2, and 3. And we have some conversation, and then we have to start to assess the expectations. There are 3 things that we have to assess for each unmet expectation. Let's say that the first circle was, oh boy, I don't know, more time with one another. Okay, Tiffany says she wants more time with one another, and her unmet expectation is time. I expected David to spend more time with me and the children, and with his career, he's always away. That was my expectation when I came into the marriage. It was not met. So the first thing we assess with expectations, and I want you to think about expectations that you have of other people that have not been met, that has caused conflict in your relationships, okay? The first thing is the expectation realistic? Is the expectation realistic? If the expectation is realistic, we're good, because now we can move on. But if the expectation is not realistic, we have to assess the person who had the unrealistic expectation, because the issue is yours and not your maid's. The issue is yours and not your partner. The issue is yours and not your spouse. If you have an unrealistic expectation, then honey, the problem is in you. And so we're not going to have couple counseling right now. We just need you to come every week. An example of an unrealistic expectation is I expect him to be more verbal about how much he loves me, right? We get that. I get that all the time. I want to hear him say how much he loves me. I want to hear that I'm beautiful every day. I want to hear that I'm valuable to him. Well, honey, that's an unrealistic expectation because you are expecting him to do for you what you cannot do for yourself. You're expecting him to do for you what you can't do for yourself. So that is an unrealistic expectation, and we can't even move forward to the next step of the conflict resolution. So first thing with the unmet expectation is to assess whether it's realistic. The next is to assess whether the expectation was communicated. A lot of the times we just assume that our loved one knows what it is we want, what it is we desire, what it is we expect, without having an explicit conversation about, this is what I expect of you. Let's talk about it. Because if you're telling me that you can't meet the expectation, then I have some decisions to make. So we assess whether or not the expectations are realistic. We assess whether the expectations were communicated explicitly with words, in a calm setting, in a loving setting, in an effective way. And then the last thing that we assess, did the other party accept the responsibility to meet that expectation? That's important. So you may say, like, I need an example, because how would that person not accept that? So let's say there is a woman, and I hate to stereotype, but I'm a woman, so I'll use us, okay? So there's a woman, we are in a relationship, we went on about 3 or 4 dates, right? And now I think that after 4 amazing dates, we should be monogamous. We should commit to one another and make this thing happen. So in this relationship, there was some infidelity, right? And so now we have to assess some things about expectations. I had an expectation that you were going to be faithful. Is that expectation realistic? That's the first step, right? We said that's the very first step. Was the expectation realistic? Well, I don't know if you can expect to jump into a monogamous relationship after 2 or 3 dates. I think I said 3 or 4, right? Let's just say 3 or 4. 3 or 4 dates. Is it realistic? Maybe not. Was the expectation communicated? Did you let him know that this is what you expected? Because see, women, we could say all day that this is what I want to be in a relationship. You can be communicating that, but at what point did he say, I've heard you and I am committed to meeting that expectation? Because it's at that point where we have an agreement that has been broken, and now we can start the process of reconciliation. So what do we do with those unmet expectations? We assess whether they were realistic, we assess whether they were communicated, and we assess whether the other party took ownership of meeting that expectation. Once we do that, then we need to fill in the missing pieces. So if there was an expectation that was not necessarily communicated, let's talk about it. Now that we're talking about it, David, do you hear Tiffany? Do you hear what she's saying? She is saying that she's expecting you to be home at least 2 weeks out of the month. She is saying that she's expecting you to dedicate the entire weekends when you are home to your family. Do you hear her? Do you think that that expectation is realistic? He says yes. Okay. Have she communicated that? You have heard her. Have you heard her today say that this is what she expects of you? David says yes. David, are you taking ownership? Are you accepting the responsibility to meet that expectation? David says yes. So now we have something to work with. And we do that for each expectation, making sure that when Tiffany and David leave, there's some commitments there. They're acknowledging that they heard the other person, right? They are saying, yes, I have committed to meeting these 3, because remember, we only circled 3. We're only addressing 3. These 3 unmet expectations, and then we hold them accountable. This is why it is so important to have a third party to seek counsel, right? To seek counsel, whether you're doing that from church, whether you're getting a therapist to help navigate through the conflict. It's important. If you guys think, if Tiffany and David think that they could do this on their own, right? They can hold each other accountable. They can have these, 2 times, 3 times a week conversations just to check in about how you feel things are going. You've done great this week, honey. I feel really loved and valued. You've taken time to stay home. We make sure that there's conversation. Sometimes when that communication hasn't been happening, you do need a third party to assist with getting that communication and that conversation going. So Tiffany and David are coming in to see Ask Schellie, and we're sitting down and we're talking about, so last week, this is what we talked about. This is what you committed to, David. This is what Tiffany committed to. David, how did Tiffany do? Did she meet this expectation this week? Did she meet your second unmet expectation this week? Did she meet your third? Tiffany, how did David do? And we continue to work through the kinks. I'm saying to this couple, be intentional about addressing the conflict. Always making sure that you are doing it from a perspective of unmet expectations and being committed to meeting the expectations of the other person and having faith that they will do the same for you. Listen, what you put in is what you're going to get out. What you put in is what you're going to get out. One of the things that this couple said is that divorce is not an option. My parents have been married for 51 years. And I have watched my mom go through some stuff. And my dad too, right? But divorce was not an option. And so they had to learn ways of addressing the needs and expectations of the other person to be able to stay and stand firm on the fact that they have been together married for 51 years. If you guys are committing to assuring that this works, then make sure you're putting in it what you're wanting to get out. Read those books, go to those retreats, take those vacations together, leave those children at home, make sure that you have your time. I have done previous lives about intimacy, cold, warm, and hot zone. Those of you who have followed, remember we talked about intimacy. We're going to talk about sex a little bit right now. But just make sure that you are putting in what you want to get out. We sometimes think that these things are just going to happen, that I'm just going to be happy in this relationship. This marriage is just going to be great. But you have to put into it. What you put in is what you're going to get out. So I recommend counseling. I recommend getting a third party to hold you guys accountable to meeting those expectations. I encourage you to look out for those couple retreats. Look out for those vacation opportunities where the children stay home and the laptops stay home and the business stay home, and start building on your marriage. Build on your marriage. We talked about that foundation, remembering that tripod, and assuring that those things are in place. Serving with one another, praying with one another, reading the word, studying, getting into that daily bread with one another. Good luck to you both. Next question. What time is it, guys? We're on James and Shauna now. James and Shayna. I need to know the time. I can't see the time. It's crazy. Someone wrote me and was like, you know what? It's also a skill to go get glasses when you need them. It's horrible. Okay, so the next question. I need your feedback, guys. It's 11:29, 12:29 maybe where you are? Okay, all right. So dear Ask Schellie, what are your thoughts on being with a selfish lover? Okay, I have to answer this very quick because we are out of time. What are your thoughts on being with a selfish lover? Now let me say this. I had to respond to this person and say, can you give me a little bit more feedback about what it is you're asking? Because it was like, selfish lover how? She's specifically talking about sex. And she says that it's to the point where she has even entertained cheating because she's not getting what she needs. Selfish lover. Prior to asking the question, I wanted to say this. Ooh, so TJ Legacy Cole says, I have a dating question. So go to www.askschellie.com and there is a page, I think it's on the contact me page, but there is a page where you are able to ask your most difficult questions, and I will hide it on this format every Tuesday at 12. So I'll be looking out for your question, TJ Legacy Cole. So there are 5 things that we need to avoid when you are choosing someone that you want to be with. And the only reason why I'm going here is because she used the word selfish. There are 5 things that we need to avoid when we are choosing someone to be with. Married folks, this doesn't go for you, because you're not going to say that Ask Schellie said this, so now I'm filing for divorce, okay? It's a little different if you're already married, but if you are in the process of choosing someone to be with, there is an ass you have to avoid. An ass you have to avoid. AAASS. That's the acronym. AAASS. There's an ass you have to avoid when you are choosing the person that you want to be with. What are the things that you should avoid? Number 1, you guys are taking notes? I don't see your notepads. You guys got your notepads out? You got your notepads out? The 5 things you need to avoid. There's a whole lot. But today, I'm only going to recognize the top 5. The first thing you should avoid is an atheist. The first thing you should avoid is an atheist. If you believe that, can I get some hearts, some likes, some something, some Cash App deposits? And I promise you, I am joking when I say that. I promise you, I am joking when I say that. Okay. The first thing that one should avoid is the atheist. You don't ever want to align yourself with someone that has foundational differences in what it is you believe, where when their belief system opposes yours. So whatever that belief system is, the number 1 thing you want to avoid is linking and connecting with someone who doesn't necessarily believe the same thing. I made that mistake. My marriage was to an Orthodox Muslim. I'm just being transparent. And it was very difficult. And I believed that with time was going to take care of it. And guess what? It did not. So it's very important that you align yourself with someone that has the same belief system. So avoid an atheist. The second, avoid a person with anger problems. Avoid a person with anger management problems. Can those things be helped? Absolutely. But if you have not even committed your time with someone, why would you even continue at the very beginning? These are warning signs that gives you a door to I'm trying to read the not so much, but okay, I see where you're going. Please give me some more comments. I want to make sure that I address that. So when I say an atheist, I did add some context to it, that it is whatever your foundational principles are. That if someone opposes that, it's going to be very difficult. I think that we think that with time, things will mesh. And I never thought that that was an important thing, because I believed, I'm going to go back to someone who said, not so much, but okay. So I was a believer, I was a Christian, and the person that I chose to marry was an Orthodox Muslim, and I appreciated and respected what he believed. He appreciated and respected what I believed, but there was a foundational piece that wasn't there. There was a foundational unity that's not there. All types of intimacy, emotional, intellectual, physical, comes out of a spiritual connection. And so when you are not on one accord spiritually, you are already starting off behind the ball. The second thing is aligning yourself with someone with anger management issues. The third is aligning yourself with someone with addiction. The fourth, aligning yourself with someone with self-discipline issues. Self-discipline. We need to make sure that you are strong enough to say no when you really want to say yes, and to say yes when you really want to say no. You want to align yourself with people who have that self-discipline. And then the last is you want to avoid aligning yourself with selfish people. Avoid an atheist or anyone else that opposes your foundational belief system, your core belief system. Core is the key word. Some of us don't even know what that core is. Your core belief system, someone with anger management issues, someone with addiction. This is at the beginning, guys. This is at the beginning. Things that you want to make sure are red flags, things that you're flagged on, things that you should consider more, okay? The fourth is someone that lacks self-discipline and someone that is selfish, because there is nothing selfish about love and commitment. That commitment that causes two people to be aligned in purpose and do the work of the kingdom in this earth. Having said that, let's move on into the second part. So she comes back and she tells me, oh no, I'm specifically talking about sex. She's talking about sex. And there was so much that was talked about, and I want to be very mindful of time. But basically she says that, someone says, because love is a sacrifice and it's selfless. Exactly. So when you have someone that's selfish, it's not selfless. The opposite of selfless is selfish, okay? And so that's very important. So those are just some things to avoid. So here we are. This is a married couple. She says that her husband will come into bed. He'll be in his man cave like almost all day, every day, and then comes into bed at wee hours of the night, 2 in the morning, sometimes 4 in the morning, 11 at all times. And this is what he's expecting. He's expecting to get down. He's expecting to get intimate. And that it's half the time she doesn't want to. Half the time she has to consume alcohol just to get to the place where she's in the mood to do so. And that even when she's in it, it's kind of like, do what you have to do and let's move on. And there isn't even an attempt for him to address her needs. And so let's use the expectation model as we kind of peel this conflict apart. Number one is what is the expectation? Sometimes people come in and they got all these problems. They talk about the problem. And I ask, what's your expectation? They can't answer. And so it appears as if the expectation is that he be more attentive to her sexual needs and desires. And if that is the case, writer, and the person who had sent me the message on Facebook Messenger, let's assume that is it, and I hit the nail on the head. So and that's an unmet expectation. There are 3 things that we have to assess, class, right? 3 things that we have to assess. So if you were listening, you know the answer. We have to assess if the expectation was what? Realistic. If the expectation was what? Communicated. If the expectation was what? Accepted by the other party. And I'm not getting any answers. So are you guys not taking notes? Right? We have to assess those 3 things. Was the expectation realistic? Was it communicated? And did the other party accept it? Number 1, is a woman's expectation that her husband would be just as committed to meeting her needs in addition to his. Is that a realistic expectation? And I believe that the answer is yes. Do you believe it's a realistic expectation? Let me know. Do you believe it is a realistic expectation? I think it is. All right, I'm getting some hearts on Facebook. It is a realistic expectation. So now we can move forward. Yes. All right. So I'm hearing Alicia says realistic, communicated, was accepted. Very good. And yes, we think it's a realistic expectation. So now we can move forward. If it was not a realistic expectation, then we need to work with the wife. The second is, was it communicated? So, well, he knows what I like. No, ma'am. Was it communicated? Did you have an intentional conversation? Not out of anger, not we're cooking and you just drop a bomb like, I need more oral sex, or I want to go to Disney and have sex on It's a Small World ride, or like, no. Was it an intentional conversation that you had with your husband where you let him know how you felt and what it is you needed? Using I statements, not you make me feel ugly, but I feel unvalued. I feel neglected. There's so much power in using I statements because you're taking ownership for how you feel, right? And so the question again, did you communicate this intentionally, lovingly, and you were direct? Did you have this conversation with your husband? And a lot of the times the answer is no. And women will say, I didn't want to hurt him. I don't want him to think that I'm not pleased, but you're not. But you're not. I don't want to hurt his manhood, but you're contemplating cheating. What would that do to his manhood? So it's important that we go back to the drawing board and we have those uncomfortable conversations. It will also include some exposure, right? Because now you have to let him know that you really haven't been happy. And so we had a similar question about someone who talked about, like, I think you guys were there. I think it was like 20 years she had been faking, her pleasure with her husband. But just making sure that you have that communication. And after you have the communication, then we need to hear if James is accepting responsibility to meet that expectation. And then we can hold James accountable. We can hold Shayna accountable as well, because James may say, well, I have some expectations, and my expectation is that whenever I feel the need, I want her to oblige. Is that realistic? Oh, maybe not, maybe not, maybe not. So James, we need to have a couple of sessions with you. You guys may think that that's realistic. We would have to assess the culture of James and Shayna's marriage, their relationship, the culture of their bedroom. There's so much to consider to assess whether realistic or expectations are realistic or not. Eddie Stark says that it's not a realistic expectation. Thank you, Eddie, for sharing. Eddie says it's not a realistic expectation for the husband to believe or to expect that the wife will oblige his sexual desires anytime he has that urge. Gallon Gator says maybe she isn't putting in the prep work too. Oh yes, that is a very good point. Because when we've talked about sex in the past, guys, what do we talk about? Cold zone, warm zone, and hot zone. And a lot of the times we're all focused on what happens in hot zone, but there are things that have to happen in cold zone, things that have to happen in warm zone to make sure that you're getting a maximized experience, sexual experience, and maximize intimacy with your husband or with your wife in hot zone. So to this woman who says, I am ready to cheat, my husband is all about himself, he's selfish in bed, and I'm just tired of it, you are recommended to sit with him, communicate what it is you need, see if he is going to explicitly accept the responsibility of meeting that expectation, and now you have something to hold him accountable to. Make sure that you're also giving him the opportunity to share some of his unmet expectations. Make sure he's communicating that to you. And now you, Shayna, have an opportunity to say to him, you know what? I can meet that expectation. I can start working out. I can wear lingerie to bed. I can take the head wrap off. I can take the muumuu off. I can, whatever it is, right? So let's have these conversations. Let's talk about expectations. Tonight, I encourage you to sit with your loved one, even if you're not in conflict, and say, you know what? Do you have any expectations of me that I'm not meeting? And take the conversation from there. The root of most problems are unmet expectations. So let us get down to the nitty-gritty and have this conversation with our loved ones about expectations that are not being met, make sure that you communicate them in an intentional and loving fashion, and make sure the other person is accepting the responsibility to meet that expectation. If you get stuck in other places where we can't even move forward because I don't think your expectation is realistic, get therapy, get the third party, call Ask Schellie, get some help. Get the third party to help you navigate through it. Because if you're stuck at, I don't think this is realistic, and he thinks it's realistic, then that's where we have to work out. That's where the infection is. And so once we could work out that, we can move on. So remember, when you are upset and there's a lot of conflict going on with the people that you love, take a step back and just assess what your unmet expectations are. Communicate them. Make sure your loved one takes responsibility for meeting them. Take the same commitment in doing that as well, because it's all about revisit expectations, reconcile, making sure that you are committed to the greater good, even if that's not what you want, but you're committed to the greater good, even if it means sacrificing what you want, and restore. It's about revisit, reconcile, and restore. I hope this was helpful to all of you. You can reach me at www.askschellie.com. I would love to entertain your questions. For those of you who have posed questions on this live, I will be sure to answer your question as we are out of time. I love the support that I get from each and every one of you. Please share this live. You never know where this live will fall. We are hoping that it falls within the line of sight, within the earshot of someone who really needs it. So your share is very, very powerful and very valuable. Thank you so much for tuning in.